Apologies for the delay, everybody. Hello and good evening or good morning or good afternoon or good whatever time of night or day it happens to be wherever you happen to be. Welcome to Republic News. I'm your hostess, Liviana. This is episode 9 of my precinct show, and the episode title is On Your Own for 10 Years, We Turn Our Lonely Eyes to You. The title alludes to changes in society, as touched upon in Don McLean's song American Pie, and the Simon and Garfunkel song Mrs. Robinson, and is intended as a tribute of sorts for the late great George Carlin, who died 10 years ago, and 10 years and some months ago, on the 22nd of June, 2008, and whose wit and wisdom are sorely missed in our present circumstances. His dark humor and satirical commentary on social, political, and economic situations would be welcomed in 2008 by many of us at least, including myself. There should be an image of George Carlin on the side of the video, but I don't know. So we'll see what happens. When the product is finished. Here's to your memory, George. May it continue to inspire. As usual on my precinct shows, I'll be going over some of the recent news, and of course, the big news this week is largely about the elections held 3 days ago on Tuesday. I'm sure many of you have seen quite a bit of coverage of these results already, but you may not have seen everything, and you haven't heard my take on it, so please stick around and perhaps you'll learn some things you didn't know about the results of Tuesday's midterm elections. If there be time when I've gone over the news, I'll try to drag some of my Discord server members into the stream, if any be in the antechamber. I think I have about 30 minutes worth of material for this evening, so there ought to be quite a bit of time for you all to come in. But I am going to pause briefly between each segment to look and see if there is anything going on, if there be anything going on in the live sidebar text chat. Maybe interact with some of you there. I also have another story that came to my attention just before I got things set up. So then let's get started, shall we? I'm going to begin with some bad news and then move on to better news. As usual, references will be added to the video description so you can consult the articles in their entirety, since I will only be reading portions of most of the articles and summarizing a few others. Let's see now. I'm going to have a look here and see what's going on in the live chat before I dive in. Looks like the the visuals of the video are still really wonky looking. There should be an image of George Carlin on stage during one of his last shows in April of 2008, but it is at least in the thumbnail. So we'll see what happens with the with the live video feed here eventually. Hopefully, as usual, the stream health will improve within a short period of time now that we are started. So, alright then. Goodness. The first item on my desk this evening is about something near and dear to my heart, the Green Party of the United States. According to preliminary reports, as yet unconfirmed at the time I prepared my remarks for this show, and I should have actually gone and looked because I did inquire again to see if I could get anything official, but I'm not going to go look now. Anyway, according to preliminary reports, as yet unconfirmed at the time I prepared my remarks for this show, the Green Party lost ballot access in Ohio, Arizona, Indiana, and Utah, and failed to regain ballot access in Minnesota. In addition, the several Green Party candidates who were running for the U.S. Congress, whether as representatives or senators, were defeated. I had some hope for the three contestants. Contestants, Jesus, this is a game show now? I had some hope for the three candidates running for U.S. Representative from California, as they were each running against a single Democratic opponent, and there was thus no chance of voting for any of them instead of the Democrat, resulting in a Republican being elected. You know, they love to talk about their so-called spoiler thing, which is a myth. But anyway, it seems that the people of California are not, as is popularly believed, progressive, leftist, or even liberal, and instead are simply partisan Democrats, or at least in those three districts. A win for any of these candidates, not just in California, because there were some candidates on the green ticket running in other states for U.S. Senate and or U.S. Representative. A win for any of these candidates would have been historic. The first Green elected to federal office in the United States. And I really thought that at least one of the three running in California had a good chance due to the amount of exposure he got and his reported popularity. But 2018 was apparently not Kenneth Mejia's year to win. He did better than either of the other two Greens running for U.S. Representative in California, but the 25.8% he won wasn't good enough. Rodolfo Cortez Barragan also did moderately well, securing 22.1% of the vote in his district, but Laura Wells won only 12.3% of the vote in her district. She also got the least exposure of the three, which probably has something to do with the less satisfactory results. Fortunately, there is some good news for my fellow Greens, but I'll save that for later, because as I said, we'll be starting with the bad news and moving on to good news. So let me have a look again in the live chat and see what's going on out there. Anybody have any questions so far? I will, by the way, as long as I can remember to do so, I will check up on any confirmation of those reports after I've gotten through with some most if not all of the news this evening. Yeah, it is, but this is a case of California where okay, so the stream health is green, which is good. Again, so maybe the video, the visuals there will stop being a mess of pixelated madness. If it were a little bit less pixelated, it might even look like some kind of well, I don't know, because it keeps changing between a few very strange looking things, but some of them have struck me as somewhat reminiscent of Piedmont Brown, and maybe a few others. What was that guy's name that did the pointillism stuff? And maybe even Jackson Pollock, hey? Anyway, California does their elections in a very unique way, at least in the United States. As far as I know, no other state in our country does things this way. What they do is they take the two frontrunners from the primaries and advance them to the general election. So I'm not even sure they have primaries, so to speak, because the Green Party doesn't really have primaries. We do just file and run. So, I mean, I think in some cases, of course, we decide at our national convention and things like that, but I don't know of primaries that we have. Not familiar with Greens running against each other in any case. It may have simply never happened so far. But yeah, so they take the two people who got the most votes in the primaries and advance them to the general election. So in these three particular elections, the two people who got the most votes were in each case a Democrat and a Green. So, you know, the Democrats love to talk about how you can't vote for Jill Stein because if you do, you're going to give us Trump. You're going to spoil the election for poor widow Hillary. Well, I'm not particularly concerned with poor widow Hillary, because poor widow Hillary would have been as bad, if not worse, than the big orange blowhard. So, I mean, you have two parties in the United States which promote the same neoliberal corporatism, which is extreme right-wing economics. You have two parties in the United States which promote the same neoconservative warmongering foreign policy, and you have two political parties in the United States which promote authoritarian anti-liberty gutting of the Bill of Rights and so forth on the domestic front, and those two parties in all three of those cases are Democrats and Republicans. There's no substantial difference between the two parties, and this goes back for years and years. Hunter S. Thompson was writing about it in 1972. By 1970, even the statement "there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties" was something of a cliche because people had said it already quite a bit. But today it's even more pronounced. The differences are purely superficial and mostly on the question of social issues, with just a little bit of variation in regards to what specifics they want to be authoritarian about. So, like for example, the Republicans want to come down on pornography and abortion, and are opposed to same-sex marriage, and have assorted other hang-ups with LGBTI persons. And the Democrats want to install hate speech laws, place even more limits on freedom of speech, and maybe overturn due process. There are several other things, but essentially both parties are very neo-puritanical. In the case of the Republicans, maybe we could just go ahead and say puritanical, since a lot of their views on these things do actually come from religious bias. Not so much the Democrats, unless you want to count the regressive mentality as a sort of cult, which some people have suggested. But not all Democrats are regressives. Some of them are faux-gressives. So you have regressives and faux-gressives and a tiny handful of modern progressives. Because I say a tiny handful because most modern progressives have kind of, bye-bye Democratic Party. But modern progressives, and just like historical progressives, don't really have a sense of party loyalty. So we're not really particularly partisan. And when we are partisan, when we are, it seems to be usually for some small or independent third party, one non-corporatist party, basically, anti-war. But anyway, Yeah, yeah. So, and I'm gonna jump back into stuff here now because I've diverted myself for a bit. Um, okay, so also bad news from California. Proposition 8, which would have capped the profits of kidney dialysis providers at 15% above direct patient costs, failed, with 62% of voters opposing the proposition. In other shitty news from California, Proposition 10, a measure to allow cities and counties to expand rent control, something not currently allowed by the state's laws, was defeated 61.7% to 38.3%. As it happens, however, some dirty tricks may have contributed to this defeat. The Los Angeles Times reported on the 27th of September that a certain landlord in the Los Angeles area had sent out a letter to tenants which has been characterized as, quote, intimidation and extortion, end quote. From the article by Liam Dillon, quote, LA landlord tells tenants Prop 10 is reason behind rent increase, pledges to cancel hike if measure fails. A Los Angeles area landlord is telling tenants that the company will cancel a new rent increase if a California rent control ballot measure fails in November, according to a letter obtained by a tenants activist. The letter informs tenants of an apartment complex that their rents are increasing and cites Proposition 10, an initiative that would allow cities and counties to expand rent control, as the cause. Now we have a quote from the August 24th letter. Quote, what this means is that although you don't want higher rent, and we did not plan on charging you higher rent, we may lose our ability to raise rents in the future as this becomes another government control on rents. Therefore, in preparation for the passage of this ballot initiative, we must pass along a rent increase today, end quote. The letter, signed by Rampart Property Management, said the company planned to cancel the rent hike if Proposition 10 failed, and that it would consider upgrades to apartments if it passed, end quote. Nor was this an isolated incident of a single landlord. A fellow Texan, a friend of mine, now living in the LA area, informed me on the 1st of November that he had been paid a visit by his landlord that very evening, who had come round to inform him that if the California rent control passed on the ballot, then all landlords would be more or less required to, quote, update to market, end quote, and my friend's rent would go up 100% to about $1,800 a month for a one-bedroom, because all rent increases across the state would be locked to 3% or inflation thereafter. His landlord was not the same as the one mentioned in the LA Times article. My friend then told me he was seriously considering moving back to Texas as a result of this threat. And you know, that's not something that he wants to do. I mean, there is a very good reason so many of us think that happiness is loving Texas in our rearview mirror, so to speak. But wait, that's not all. If you order now, on the 3rd of November, the Mercury News, another Bay Area newspaper, reported that landlords were raising rents before the new regulations could take effect. From the article by Marissa Kendall, quote, as Proposition 10 looms, some landlords raise the rent. The Election Day showdown is still days away, but some rental industry experts say a push to expand rent control already is impacting a handful of Bay Area tenants, and not in the way proponents are seeking. Some landlords, worried Californians will vote to allow cities to cap rents on more homes, are rushing to raise rents before the new regulations can take effect. Much of the anxiety is rooted in uncertainty, landlords and their lawyers say, because they don't know whether the measure will pass or how their properties would be impacted by the change. Voters on November 6th will weigh in on Proposition 10, which would repeal Costa-Hawkins, a 1995 state law limiting rent control. If passed, the ballot measure would open the door for cities to expand rent control to previously exempt properties, single-family homes, condos, and apartments built after 1995. And cities would be allowed to impose vacancy control, which would prohibit landlords from raising rents to market rate after tenants protected by rent control move out. Eduardo Torres, Northern California Regional Coordinator of Tenants Together, said, quote, "It's just reacting to the possibility of Proposition 10 passing," end quote. He also said he's seen landlords preemptively raising rents over the past few months. Daniel Bornstein, a lawyer who represents Bay Area landlords, has helped dozens of clients raise rents in anticipation of Proposition 10 passing, and recently wrote a blog post advising landlords who currently are exempt from rent control to consider rent increases before any rule change takes effect. The goal is to protect landlords, especially those who haven't been raising their rents regularly, from getting locked into below-market prices, he said. Bornstein said, quote, "Being proactive is good legal counseling, so rents have been imposed reasonably, market rate rents, in anticipation of potentially being regulated in the future," end quote. Even so, many landlords are keeping rents as is and waiting to see what happens November the 6th. Santa Clara-based landlord attorney Todd Rothbard said, quote, "I don't know that there's anything you can do proactively to get yourself ready for it if it does pass," end quote. Rosemary S. Medina, a 72-year-old retired restaurant hostess, was hit by a pre-Prop 10 rent increase last month. S. Medina, who has lived in a two-bedroom single-family home in Alameda for 20 years, was paying $1,000 a month, far below market rate, and last received a rent hike in 2014. As the election approached, S. Medina's landlord announced the rent would jump to $1,500, a 50% increase, end quote. So, in response to this, I will offer a quote from Dr. Hunter S. Thompson's classic work, Fear and Loathing on the Campaign Trail 72. Quote, "Passive incompetence is one thing, but aggressive Nazi hostility on the corporate level is something else again," end quote. So let's see how you all are reacting, if I'm still even online, and stuff like that. Hi Ryan, and hi Seb, Fluffy, Jables, everybody who happens to be still out there. Anybody have any comments to make about the rent control, the shenanigans, if you will, in California? Okay. Well, one moment. Here we get back. My mama kitty is trying to crawl up on things she is supposed to be on. Alright, then, well, I had hoped that some of you might have a few things to say about that, but perhaps you're waiting until for a chance to come on live and talk about it. No. So let's continue then. Oh yes, and in reference to the quote from Dr. Hunter S. Thompson, quote, passive incompetence is one thing, but aggressive Nazi hostility on the corporate level is something else again, end quote. Speaking of which, it is my sad duty to inform you all that Debbie Wasserman Schultz won another term in the U.S. House of Representatives. At least that appears to be the case, although shenanigans have been reported. It does seem rather unbelievable that Tim Canova, a good man, an honorable man, a man of the people, a man of modern progressive values, would get only 5% of the vote in that race, as has been reported, and that Debbie would win by such a large... oh my God, she's absolutely hideous. Hopefully Tim will mount a successful challenge, including evidence of said shenanigans, and the results will turn out differently from what the initial reports indicated. As many another modern progressive believes, my contention is that Debbie Wasserman Schultz should be in jail for her role in the 2016 Democratic primaries, if for nothing else. I'd say there are some other reasons as well, but that's a matter for another stream or video. And much of this has been covered by other commentators, including Tim Black, Jimmy Dore, Ron Plakonin, and several others. And she ain't the only one I think should be in jail for election shenanigans in the 2016 Democratic primaries, but perhaps I'll talk about this another time. Again, though, others have covered these matters in some detail. I will include a few links in the video description which may be of interest, and you all might like to search YouTube for some other information about the previous election in which Tim ran against her and the shenanigans involved in that election and its aftermath, including what might well be a stunning example of obstruction of justice, as Tim has alleged. For what it's worth, I believe him, and I think Debbie Wasserman Schultz follows in the footsteps of Boss Tweed. Hopefully she will reap the same harvest Boss Tweed did, too. Let's see. Any comments? Anybody got anything to say about any of this yet? No, probably not. Oh my goodness, what's this? So, anything at all about the... I find it rather unpleasant to even say her name because it evokes her image in my mind, and then I'm seeing her before my mind's eye and I'm going, but anyway, alright then, moving on. In other bad news, although unrelated to the election, Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg fell on Wednesday, fracturing 3 ribs. She is 85 years old, the oldest justice in the Supreme Court. She has been admitted to the hospital for treatment and observation. Here's hoping for a full and speedy recovery. Continuing our romp through the news arising from the recent elections, Daniel Beekman and Nina Shapiro report in the Seattle Times that Washington state voters approved regulations on firearms. I'm going to kind of skip over any pro or con comments in the article, but I'm going to read a little bit of it. Quote, Washington state voters agree to further regulate guns, including semi-automatic rifles. I-1639 was the only state gun regulations measure on the November 6th ballot anywhere in the country. A state gun regulations ballot measure seeking to make Washington's firearms laws among the strictest in the country passed Tuesday with 60% of the vote in election night returns. The measure led in large western counties and trailed in most eastern counties. Votes will continue to be counted in the coming days. The sweeping 30-page measure will raise the legal age to buy semi-automatic rifles to 21. To obtain such weapons, people will need to pass an enhanced background check, take a training course, and wait 10 business days after a purchase. I-1639 will also enact a storage law. Gun owners who don't secure their firearms with devices such as a trigger lock or safe could be charged with gross misdemeanor or felony community endangerment crimes for allowing prohibited people such as children to access and display or use the weapons. Alan Gottlieb of the Citizens Committee said I-1639 opponents plan to sue in an attempt to block the measure. End quote. So, I don't really have... yeah, I'm sure you have quite a lot to say about this, Jables. Maybe you will come in here in a bit. Yeah. Hello, Shonach. What is what? Are you talking about the rather bizarre-looking visuals? I'm not sure if you guys are still seeing the hideous. Oh wow, I just don't know what the heck is going on with that. I don't know, it's been doing that since I started. The measure did pretty well, it looked like, in Spokane as well, which I thought was rather surprising. I didn't expect that kind of gun control thing going on over there, but you know, that was this morning, so I mean, things might have changed since then. I don't know how much things are going to change now at this date, since I think probably most of the ballots have been counted, including you know, absentee ballots and early voting and provisional ballots and so forth. So I'm not sure what more will change. The point of this stream, if you look in the video description, it's Friday night. We're going to be reviewing recent news and chatting about whatever comes to mind once I bring some of my people into the stream. And yes, it is one of the YouTube Saints pre-shows. There are two. Jables and Rimshi do the other one. And as far as I know, there are only two. Yeah. So, yeah, I'll bring you on, hopefully in a bit, Jables, and maybe we can interact about this. I don't know that there's going to be too much to say between the two of us, since we are likely to agree on the question. So, in somewhat neutral news, the Arkansas Supreme Court disqualified ballot issue 3, which would have imposed term limits on state legislators. I'm not aware of what basis the state's Supreme Court used to disqualify this issue. I also don't have a lot to say about this one, because I think the term limits which would have been imposed would have been counterproductive due to them being a bit much, restricting terms in the state's House of Representatives to 3 two-year terms for a total of a mere 6 years, and terms in the state Senate to 2 four-year terms for a mere total of 8 years, further restricting anyone from serving more than 10 years total in the state's legislature. I think that's a bit too short a time to learn the ropes and become effective. However, I do most certainly support the idea of term limits in principle. If I were drafting a proposition for term limits in the state of Arkansas, I think I would go with limiting the senators more than representatives, since senators generally have more power than representatives, although I'm not really sure how the two relate in that state. My proposal would likely be something like 5 four-year terms for senators for a total of 20 years, and 12 two-year terms for representatives for a total of 24 years, further restricting anyone from serving more than 28 years total in the state's legislature. That would give an individual more than sufficient time to learn the ropes. It would give them time to become effective, have some impact, possibly even a legislative legacy. Now, of course, If a person stays in office too long, he or she has potential to do great harm, but preventing that is the responsibility of the voters and other office holders. A person might also do great good in such a period of time. But I think anybody going for more than 28 years, and really 28 is quite a while. Yeah, I think that would be yeah, tendency to have moss growing on your back and getting more and more set in your ways, and more and more willing to ignore input from your constituents and so forth. Okay, let me have another look in here and see what's going on. Anybody? Body parts, okay, sure. Oh, I know who some of you guys are. Yeah, I do. You've come in here from Xiaomi's server, haven't you? Be respectful, Caligula. That is George Carlin. Yeah, I recognize your name, at least. I think you've come here from well, either from Xiaomi's or one of Kraut's discords. Anyway, so turning to other items of interest related to the elections, and some of these will be good, some bad. I'm going to read a few brief excerpts from an article by Robert Mackey in The Intercept. So, quote, Chris Kobach, the Kansas Secretary of State, best known nationally for his role on President Trump's bogus voter fraud commission, and locally as a champion of voter suppression, was defeated by Democrat Laura Kelly in the race to be that state's governor. I'll pause here just to comment. Yeah. What did they find? Like nine cases of voter fraud in the entire fucking nation. As usual, this is just something that gets drummed up to make noise about, many years ago. I mean, I've heard this all my life, and my dad used to talk about this in the 70s, that Democrats would register dead people and have someone vote for them and shit like that. Yeah, it's nowhere near as widespread. Nowhere near as widespread a matter of concern as these claims would suggest. I mean, in every case where it has been investigated, the number of actual cases of voter fraud have been found to be minuscule, like less than 1%. But anyway, moving on, also in the same article, quote, in Florida, media outlets project that voters in the state have approved a ballot initiative to restore voting rights to 1.4 million residents who are currently unable to vote because of prior felony convictions. I'm going to make a little comment about this one as well. I believe it hasn't been too long ago that I believe every state in this country did not allow felons to vote. A convicted felon or ex-convicts or whatever were not allowed to vote. But that has been changing gradually. And I'm sure, I think that while they are in prison, they shouldn't be allowed to vote. But once they've served their time, paid their debt to society, or however you want to refer to it, then yeah, I don't know that keeping them disenfranchised is particularly beneficial to anyone. Continuing also in the same article from The Intercept, quote, election day was plagued as usual by reports of malfunctioning equipment, errors on voter rolls, and long delays. 18 years after the debacle in Florida focused the world's attention on the patchwork of local election laws and procedures used to elect state and federal office holders. Complaints about how difficult it was to vote in many states piled up throughout the day on social networks, end quote. For example, there were voting machines that were delivered without power cords, so that once the battery ran down in them, they went dead. There were a number of other issues that were reported. There were precincts that were closed, which weren't supposed to be closed. There was a precinct where the landlord or whomever had put new locks on the door, and supposedly had thrown them out for non-payment of rent or something. I'm not really clear on what that one was about. And there were stories like this just all over. There were things in Georgia, there were things in Florida, there were things in Arizona, in Texas, in at least two precincts in Houston. A federal judge ordered, or state or federal judge, I'm not sure, ordered the polling places to stay open later than they were scheduled to be because of these difficulties. So, anyway, as incredible as it may be, some people don't seem to believe we have any need for election reform, or perhaps they simply don't want to lose their advantages for their vested interests. I would like to see a return to the availability of paper ballots everywhere. As far as I know, you can request a paper ballot in any precinct anywhere in the nation, but because they don't expect everyone to request paper ballots, they may not have enough for everyone in their precinct to use. I don't think that's a good idea. There needs to be a definite trail from the precinct to the county courthouse where the ballots are counted. They need to be counted and recounted, both by machine and by hand. There need to be, at least two different parties in the vehicle transport, representatives of at least two different political parties in the vehicle transporting the ballot boxes from the local precincts to the county courthouse, so they can keep an eye on each other. There need to be multiple parties represented in the counting of the ballots by hand, and there needs to be even citizen volunteers allowed to review the vote tallies and so forth, because the paper trail needs to be preserved. It's not something that should be destroyed after 6 months or 2 years or whatever. It needs to stay, so that there can always be, if there ever should be any question, that there will be a record. So before I continue, I'm going to have another look in here and see what's going on. Let's see here. Yeah, okay, sure. If you look up in the upper, if you can actually see the image, I'm suitably impressed, because I see this jumble of mishmash strangeness on my screen. But if you look up in the upper left corner, you will see my avatar. George Carlin's image is the background, so to speak, for the video. So, alright, so it looks like we're buffering again. Georgia, what are you doing? Okay, you're not on it. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. I mean, maybe if voter fraud were the issue, they should not have the right to vote restored to them. That might be the single exception. Alright then, so I'm going to continue. Let's turn now to some good news. Returning to Arkansas, not all of the election results were abysmal there. Ballot issue 5 did pass, which will raise the minimum wage in the state from the current $8.50 an hour to $9.25 an hour on the 1st of January. Then again to $10 an hour on the 1st of January 2020, and finally to $11 an hour on the 1st of January 2021. This is wow. I mean, if minimum wage had kept pace with the cost of living increases since the late 80s, it would now be $22 an hour in most states and more in some states. Out on the West Coast, for example, cost of living is, well, I mean, you heard me talking about the rents on one-bedroom apartments out there. It's pretty crazy. So, I mean, like, my friend, for example, says if it had gone up to $1,800 a month for him, that would have been a 100% increase, which means that he's paying about $900 right now. So, I mean, that's crazy for a one-bedroom apartment. My goodness, it hasn't been that long ago that, and I remember the very year things changed. It was 1992. I was living outside a university town with 2 universities. One of the top 2 universities in my state at the time was located there. I was living outside the town in a 3-bedroom, not far outside of town, like maybe 5 minutes outside the city limits. I was paying $155 a month for the 3-bedroom. Later that year, I moved to go to graduate school, and it was a larger city, a larger metropolitan area, you know, so you might expect prices to be higher, a little higher than that. You might, I mean, there were quite a few universities scattered throughout that metropolitan area. But I couldn't find a one-bedroom efficiency apartment for less than I think it was $550 a month. And then I came back to the town where I had been previously, and everything there had gone up significantly as well. And for no apparent reason. You know, it just, boom, let's raise the rents on everything. What? And that was the beginning of the so-called housing bubble, which, you know, of course, did eventually burst, like these bubbles generally do. I mean, as far as I know, they always do. But bubble economies are a feature of capitalism and have been since the 15 or 1600s, when capitalism began. Anyway, well, I mean, good for the people of Arkansas. They're getting at least some raise, but I'm sure that the greedy, wealthy there will raise their prices on goods and services to make up for that, because they've got to always get their bigger slice of the pie. Not all of the election results in California were shitty either. Proposition 2, which would allow the state to issue $2 billion of bonds to fund housing for homeless and mentally ill Californians, was successfully passed with 61% of the vote. California's Proposition 7, which would give the state legislature the ability to change daylight saving time period if changes be consistent with federal law, also passed with 59.9% of the vote. So, and I mean, I'm going to come back to some other different states' election results momentarily. Let me have a look, see what's going on out here. Yeah, $1,010 for a studio apartment in Seattle. That's So, yeah, that's quite interesting, and it's kind of crazy. Yeah. Well, diddly diddly diddly. Let me see here. I'm going to have a look at something real quick and see what I can see. Because I think I may have to go to bitch mode here. Let's see here. I don't know. So, alright. So, let's see. Okay, so also now, it turns out that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez won her election for a representative, U.S. representative from New York, and she is the youngest woman ever elected to Congress. I'm cautiously optimistic about her, but I also have a few misgivings. I'll be keeping an eye on her performance to discover whether she actually be a modern progressive or another progressive Democrat, and whether she be an authentic leftist, maybe a centrist, or even an establishment neoliberal. It was late as I was preparing my remarks for this show, but I believe I recall some hints of neoconservative foreign policy from her as well. And certainly her overly kind words for Senator McCain could indicate such a perspective, but they could also have been simply an attempt at politeness and, trying to show that she can be diplomatic and so forth. She definitely has passion. Alexandria has advocated for modern progressive and leftist policies, and she campaigned on them not only in the primary but also in the general, unlike Andrew Gillum. She's young, under 30, 29 to be precise, just turned 29, I think in October. That youth comes with both pros and cons. She's got the passion and vigor of youth, but she also has the inexperience of youth. Public service requires more than passion and vigor. It also requires prudence, diligence, and consideration. So yes, her inexperience is a detriment. But when a responsibility is given to someone, they can either botch it through inexperience, or they can grow into it, and sometimes grow rather quickly. Her passion can help motivate her to grow into the role quickly, but she'll have to learn to temper her passion with diligence, consideration, reason, and discernment, and selecting good advisors, out of which prudence may sprout and grow. She's not perfect, but she's no Machiavellian like Hillary Clinton. She stands for something besides her own ego and her own ambition. You can see it in her, that passion. She wants to make a difference, not just for herself, but for the people of her district, the people of her city, of her state, the people of her nation, and for the people of the world. That zeal can be dangerous. It can burn. But life would be very cold without that fire, too, as the Romulan proverb says. Certain it is, and true, love burns, ale burns, fire burns, politics burns, but cold were life without them. New York can be a very cold place. I think they could use some fire. I think the people of the 14th Congressional District of New York could do a lot worse than Alexandria. And I think she needs to select some very good advisors now that she has won the election. Business Insider reports that 8 new scientists have been elected to the U.S. Congress, 1 senator, 7 U.S. representatives, including an ocean expert, a nurse, and a biochemist. In Kentucky, Kim Davis, the county clerk who refused to sign marriage licenses for gay couples, has been defeated in the election. She lost to Democratic challenger Elwood Cottle Jr. by about 700 votes. There was a little bit of nastiness in the primary between the 2 Democratic contenders, with the gay contender having lost the primary and accusing the winner, Elwood Cottle Jr., of being a homophobe, to which Cottle replied that he planned to sign marriage licenses for gays and straights and everybody without any kind of prejudice. He wanted to treat everyone as equal. So I mean, I don't know the specifics of that charge. I do, however, know there is a rather marked tendency among certain proponents of identity politics to play victim card and call people the most horrible things, racist and sexist and homophobe and transphobe and all these, misogynist and Nazi and whatever. So moving on. Although the Green Party seems to have failed to regain ballot access in Minnesota, a couple of other pro-cannabis parties succeeded in gaining major party status in the state. The Legal Marijuana Now Party and the grassroots Legalize Cannabis Party both seem to have secured the requisite 5% or more of the vote in 2 election races. So that looks interesting. In other cannabis news, Illinois has elected J.B. Pritzker to be their new governor, and he says he wants to legalize recreational cannabis in the state. Michigan voters have approved legalization of cannabis recreationally. Apparently there will be, the ability to grow and do some other stuff as well. At least one Michigan judge decided to postpone cannabis possession cases until after the new law takes effect, when he will likely throw them out in accord with the new law. Utah and Missouri have approved medical cannabis, and Jeff Sessions has resigned from his cabinet post as U.S. Attorney General at President Trump's request. A lot of the Democrats are pissing themselves over this because, he just fired him because he didn't want to Russiagate, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you know what? Jeff Sessions is a pissant, and he needed to not be in the position in the first place. Fucking little Keebler troll, man. My apologies to the Keebler company, but that guy. I mean, he's not a Keebler elf. He's a troll. Okay. Anyway. And I don't mean an internet troll. Of course. Anyway, also, Canada is running low on cannabis just weeks after it went on sale throughout the country. Several other bits of news related to the sacred herb are also worthy of note, and I'll have full links for all news articles pertaining to what I've gone over this week in the video description shortly. And speaking of green, I now come back to the Green Party, as I said I would earlier in this show. In California, in spite of the losses of the elections to federal office in the state, Greens did win 10 elections for local and district offices, and in Massachusetts, the Green Rainbow Party seems to have regained official party status. So here's a cheer for the victories we won, hip hip hurrah, and remember that we must work harder in order to win more. So let's see, now there is one more story that came across my desk today, early, just before I started here. Let's see what else is going on. All right, let me have a look at this other story here, because I thought it would perhaps be a bit interesting. Oh yes, and this is also a bit of bad news, and it is also related to the Green Party. But it's not bad news for the Green Party so much as it is just another example of how the duopoly tries to suppress alternative voices, because, they have a vested interest in maintaining the duopoly, obviously. This may garble my voice input for a moment, but let me see here where we're at. Okay, so this is from the DC Media Group, and they report that former contender for Pennsylvania state office purged from voter rolls in Philly. So I don't think she's just a former candidate for Pennsylvania state office. I think she also was Schultz's running mate in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, a candidate in a contentious race for Pennsylvania state delegate last year founded this morning. This is from the 6th, and it's by Ann Metter. Found this morning that her name has been purged from the voter rolls at her polling place in Philadelphia. Cherie Honkala, the Green Party write-in candidate in a 2017 special election, said poll workers couldn't find her name on the official list of voters. They knew something was amiss, Honkala said, because they are all acquainted with her. She said, quote, "Some were having a heart attack and others didn't know what to do," end quote. She didn't want to fill out a provisional ballot for fear it wouldn't be counted. The district attorney had opened an investigation into a host of allegations of election fraud and intimidation charges stemming from the special election held in March of 2017. One finding of the investigation was that many provisional ballots had not been counted. At her insistence, the poll workers got the old book of voter listings from a previous year, Honkala said, confirming her name in it with her ID. She was able to vote. She believes that the disappearance of her name from the voting rolls may have been retribution for campaigning as the Green Party candidate for state delegate in the 197th district in 2017 and competing against Democrat Emilio Vasquez. The special election to replace state rep Leslie Acosta, a Democrat who resigned after being convicted of a felony embezzlement charge, was full of irregularities. To begin with, the Republican candidate was only named officially on the ballot. Was the only name officially on the ballot. A Commonwealth court took the Democratic candidate off the ballot when it was determined he didn't actually live in the district. His replacement, Emilio Vasquez, didn't make the deadline for the ballot and had to run as a write-in. Honkala also missed the deadline and ran a write-in campaign. Vasquez won the election. This goes on a little bit longer. I will go ahead and include a link to this article as well in the video description. And I think I've already got all of that prepared. Let me just be sure here before I... no, I don't have it. That's strange. I thought oh, wait. Maybe I had... I don't know. Let's see. What's the former contender? I don't know. I may have stuck it in here at some... no, I don't see it. So let me go ahead and... once more briefly around the park, Jeeves. Yeah, I don't see it there, so I'm going to go ahead and put that into my notes, and I will be adding it to the video description momentarily. Just give me a moment here to get things ready and dealt with. And let's see. And there's that. And the link itself. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so let me have a look, see what's going on in the sidebar live stream text chat. Anybody? Yeah, I don't know about. Oh wow, the entire province is practically completely out of cannabis in Canada. That's unfortunate. And yeah, pinkies up to pay your respects to our poor Canadian deprived neighbors up there. Yeah, okay, so the oh well fuck, it's my description is now too long. Okay. Shit. I'll have to mess around with that a little bit here. So it might not, the full description might not be available until after the stream is complete, or I may have to just put it up on my publication instead. So let me have a look. See, I think there were a couple of people in the in the antechamber. Let's bring you in here, guys, and boom, and boom. So what you guys up to? And I think you're muted, Jables, so you're gonna have to unmute yourself. I see Lord Blastington. Ryan is here.
Hi.
Hey, what's going on?
Hey, I'm gonna mute the stream.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. How's it going?
Oh, pretty good. How are you guys?
I'm doing okay. Just like right now, just kind of like looking up some game stuff and also making some meat.
Meat? What kind of meat? You cooking beef or pork or what?
No, making memes.
Oh, memes. I'm sorry. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, I just, of course, thinking see when I see stuff on my turkey, there are a lot of things seem to happen, and I I'm being kind of distracted with real life. There's kind of a lot going on that if my first impressions think that maybe these are things I should probably distance myself too from.
Things from which you should distance yourself, such as?
Yeah, I'm just saying no. Well, I guess maybe there's so many things that I can't get that give my impression that it could end very badly, that I should probably just distance myself with all the internet drama on Twitter and social media.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Did you so apparently I think it was yesterday, Carl Benjamin Sargon of Akkad had put out a new video in which he I don't know, I guess he poked at Ethan Ralph and Andy Worski a little bit, maybe at Jimmy Medicare as well. And there were a few people predicting that the Spurgery was going to start up again. I watched maybe a few minutes of the stream that Carl did, and just kind of hopped around a little bit in it to see. And it was just, from what I could tell, it was just him shit talking them. And I am still subscribed to Carl. I don't really watch most of his. I haven't watched much of his content in a couple of years, really. He's changed quite a bit. I'm still subscribed to the Thinkery, which for a while there I thought he was doing a little bit better stuff there than on his main channel, and I'm still subscribed to the Ancient Recitations channel, but it's kind of dead now, which is a shame. My boyfriend and I both liked that, him reading from ancient texts and just giving sort of an audiobook version, if you will, of a few ancient texts. I think he did part of the Epic of, what did he do? Part of the Epic of Gilgamesh at one point, or some kind of Sumerian hymn. I don't remember now, but yeah, that was kind of interesting. But he just doesn't. He's changed a lot. From, at least it seems to have, from a couple of years ago.
He's gotten full of himself. That's what happened.
Yeah, I think I get the impression that Sargon is literally becoming another Bob Chipman, some guy who as he becomes more famous, becomes less self-aware.
Yeah, that could be.
Well, for the last like year and a half, almost 2 years now, he's been boasting his subscriber count as a sign that he's probably.
Uh-huh.
So, I've heard about him doing that a lot in private and in public.
Well, I did think that maybe, I mean, I could see the the ego involved, but at the same time, I thought that maybe his trying to start up the liberalist thing might accidentally have some kind of positive results, and there was the thing where Jimmy and he were kind of going back and forth, insulting each other and so forth, and Jimmy was mocking him for starting the liberalist thing, and I guess it was V who had replied to that and said, hey, at least he's trying to do something in the real world, what the fuck are you doing? You're just sitting on the internet making fun of people. So, I mean, I thought that was pretty apt there on V's part. I don't know, I do think that Carl talks about a lot of stuff without sufficient knowledge to be talking about it, or maybe he just is overly eager to gloss over the distinctions between things.
Kind of.
Oh my goodness, is that you or is that us? Hello, hello? Oh, something weird is... Oh.
Yeah, sorry, my internet's cutting out for some reason.
Yeah, okay, so... Yeah, you were roboting.
Actually...
I wasn't saying anything.
Actually, I think it was you, like...
It might have been me then. It might have been all of us, who knows? Could be some routing nodes dropping packets or something, shit like that.
They're after us.
That's
trying
it.
To shut us down.
We've exposed them for the establishment pimps that they are.
Yeah. So one big issue that I have with Carl or Sargon, is that he constantly just takes things and then ruins them. And he's already said that he's essentially abandoning the whole liberalist party thing, and he's just trying to take over UK.
Yeah, I saw that.
He's been extremely open about that.
I saw that. That was quite a spectacle. Yeah.
Yeah, it's cringy as fuck. You're gonna take over. Well, I guess him and Dink got so many people to join that they could possibly do.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. Dink joined just for the memes.
Yeah.
And then Sargon joined, and then a bunch of other people just followed him to try to take it over. I don't know what's going to happen with that.
Well, like I said, my impression of Carl is that he likes to talk about some stuff that he doesn't really know enough about to talk about, really. In my case, I generally don't talk about things if I don't know at least a little bit about them, and I prefer not to talk about things at all if I don't know quite a bit about them, which is one of the reasons I come out with so few videos. I like to do research on things. I mean, there are occasionally I can just talk for hours and hours without a break about subjects that I know from university or graduate school, but I don't know how much interest there is in philosophy and religious studies and theology and and things like that. I mean, you could go on and on about linguistics for several. Talk about specific historical etymologies and word pictures and so forth that I find very interesting, but I realize I'm a nerd, so
Yeah.
But yeah, like, you know Jim
sorry, go ahead.
You know Jim Desborough, right? Grim Jim? Grimmachu?
Yep.
Yeah. Well, so Grim has pointed out several times that whenever Carl starts talking about socialism and criticizing it, he's actually criticizing Marxism. You know, there are a number of different kinds of socialism. Marxism wasn't even the first. There were other kinds of socialism around before Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels stumbled on the scene, and they were called socialism. You know, I mean, it's not like they invented the term even. So, and you can look at some of their work in which they criticize other forms of already extant socialism. And, you know, certainly there have been more kinds of socialism arise since their time. So it's not like it's all the fucking same thing. And criticizing one particular kind of socialism doesn't mean you're criticizing all kinds of socialism. Most socialists disagree rather vehemently at times, at least, about a number of things. And there are very distinctly non-Marxist socialists who regard Marxism as extreme and fanatical. So, I mean, there's also...
Well, I think a mixed economy is best in this.
That would be a social democracy, yeah. Well, you know, we did have sort of a social democracy after FDR got in office with the introduction of, you know, social safety nets and the reintroduction of some regulations that had been removed during the Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover years with their laissez-faire mania. And new regulations put in place as well, as well as other institutions and the like set up as precautionary measures, like the FDIC, for example. And that was better than what we have now. Ever since January of '81, when Reagan became president, every administration has done their damnedest to undo all of the things that were put in place after FDR became president. So there have been repeated attempts to gut Social Security. There have been a repeal of Glass-Steagall and replacing it with Dodd-Frank, and I think they even got rid of that now, or maybe just made it impotent or something. I don't know. Reagan started making the Sherman Antitrust Act into an irrelevancy. Bill Clinton, you know, promoted and signed the Telecommunications Act of 1996, leading to the situation we have now, in which a mere 5 or 6 mega corporations own over 90% of the media in this country. And you know, it's this kind of economic view is called neoliberalism. It is one of at least 2 or 3 types of corporatism, which is extreme right-wing economics, it just boggles my mind how so many people still buy into the rhetoric that the Democratic Party is the left, or even part of the left, because they're certainly not.
No, they aren't. I also think in order to get people to settle down and stop pointing fingers at whether left or right, Republican, Democrat, I think a really good addition to that would be to bring back the old rule where second place gets the vice presidency.
That would be interesting. They would have to work together. But then, you know, the thing there is, if it is a Republican and a Democrat, they're going to be collaborating anyway, because, I mean, they put on a good show sometimes of being opposed to each other, but it's really just a wrestling match, you know? You get the...
Well, that's how it used to be.
Yeah, I know. But things were different back then. There was some actual opposition between the two parties. I guess what was that, like the first 2 or 3 administrations?
I think it was more than that, but no, because Jefferson was still.
Okay.
It happened around Aaron Burr. Around Aaron Burr's.
Yeah. Wow, shit, it's already 8:24, and I mean, I got a late start. Some delay in being able to get everything set up. And I know the guys are going to start their stream in about 6 minutes. So, I mean, I guess we could... You guys got anything else on your mind you want to talk about?
We want to talk about, like, maybe, like, game stuff, like Diablo Immortal sort of thing.
Uh-huh.
Oh, god damn. Yeah, can we talk about how gaming developers need to stop demonizing their fans?
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, actually, kind of like two minds. Like, have you seen, like, actually, I saw a video from a guy named Sacrum, and he actually did a sort of a fair and balanced analysis of it, and he kind of pointed out, like, maybe the reason why because he pointed out that Diablo 3 is already a pale shadow of its former self, and the game developer and the other game developer Blizzard licensing, their Diablo clone is actually more true to the first 2 Diablo games. So he's saying that there is that aspect, but also, like, there's some other. But I think that Blizzard should actually handle the PR much better. And of course, like, actually, I'm playing, like, a mobile game right now, which called Monster Super League. Like, it kind of also addressed, like, the issue with microtransactions. Like, because the game I'm playing, they provide you a alternative way to get the premium currency without spending money, but it requires playing the game more. So if they implement something similar to Diablo, it could, in theory, create a more hardcore player base.
Mm-hmm.
No, because the hardcore Diablo fans are PC gamers.
Yeah.
They don't wanna fuck around with mobile. Those are games that they play. Those are games that they play when they're on the toilet. Is mobile games. They want to sit down with their excellent 4K screen. They want to sit down with their mechanical keyboard and their gaming mouse that has modded buttons on it and everything.
Yeah.
That's what the hardcore Diablo fans want. I'm not against them putting out a mobile game. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But when they were mentioning that they had no plans on any releases for PC, and then the guy was just like, "What? You guys don't have phones?"
Yeah.
That's where the issue is.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
No,
I'm just saying, like, it is true saying that there are a lot of modern mobile games that are, like, at least on console level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, console is a whole nother animal from mobile phone games too. Matt Jarbo, I think it was last night maybe, he did a stream in which he was talking a little bit about this, and he said that he had Diablo 3 and had never even taken it out of the package. So that was, Mundane Matt, for those who maybe don't know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's because Diablo 3 is a great game and Matt is just mundane.
Well, I don't know. I like Matt. He's a nice guy.
I do. Yeah, I met him at PAX this last year. Yeah, he's a nice guy. But the issue is, like, gaming on your phone and gaming on a PC or even on a console, totally different things. I'd rather have a controller in my hand than touching around on my phone.
Yeah, I've got everybody thinks Android is what is it? No, not Android. I'm sorry, Alienware. Sorry, everybody thinks Alienware is the big gaming thing, but it's really just a Dell But I do have an Alienware gaming mouse that I got to go with my Asus computer, which is really better kind of.
Did you say your ISIS computer?
Asus, A-S-U-S.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how that's supposed to be pronounced. I pronounce it as if it were a Latin word, so Asus.
Just Asus. Asus.
Yeah, I'll probably keep calling it Asus.
Yeah. Yeah, I have one of those too.
It's pretty cool in Star Trek Online because the 3 little lights on it change color depending on what faction you're playing. So you get this green color if you're playing as Romulan. You get kind of an orangish reddish color if you're playing KDF, Klingon Defense Force, and blue if you're playing Federation. I guess it probably goes to some kind of violet or purple if you're playing as Dominion. I'm not sure. How does that work, Ryan?
The main colors are kind of purple, but I don't have that keyboard like so.
Yeah. I would think it probably goes to that purplish color, but you know the Age of Yesterday and Age of Discovery kind of sub-factions of the Federation get the same blue as Federation does, in spite of them having different colors, you know, for their as you know, like the transporter animation. Like the Age of Yesterday has the kind of yellowish color, and I don't really know what the heck to describe the one from Age of Discovery as. It kind of maybe is white? I don't know. But anyway, so yeah. Oh, it's 8:31 now. You guys have anything else on your minds?
Oh yeah, Jeff pissed off some people this week, so I'm gonna. Yeah.
Jeff Holiday pissed off some people.
Yeah, he's always pissing off people.
Oh, so
yeah, he released a new Song of Salt and Poo episode, and then he's been pissing off some people on Twitter. So that means the chat's probably gonna get next.
Yeah.
Wait,
Maybe.
did he piss them off with the Salt and Poo up?
Yeah. Do you know how much hate comments he get? Do you know how many hate comments he gets?
Wait, from
like
Jilly
whenever he
Juice?
posts from Jilly Juice fans, yeah.
Yeah.
She has a massive cult following.
That's incredible. I mean, you know, that's really. Let's just give ourselves. Oh my God, she's just. Wow, I can't believe that anyone has fallen for that.
Oh yeah. Some people have fallen for it. Some people have gotten out.
Yeah. Well, okay then. I'm a little bit concerned about my boyfriend. He should have been home an hour ago from work, but you know, sometimes he lingers, or he might be off doing something else. I'm going to text him here in a few moments, see if he's okay and everything. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and call this a stream. Let's see. If you have enjoyed this video, this stream, please hit the like button and subscribe. Click the bell icon next to the subscribe button to be notified of all new content. Please also consider sharing the video on your social media. I have a Discord server for my subscribers, which is called Lives, Live Streams, and Vids, and you may find the link in the video description if you'd like to join. If you like what I do here on YouTube and or at The Progressive Flame, please consider becoming my patron through Patreon. The link for my Patreon is also in the video description. Until next time, have fun, but stay safe. For Republic News, this is Liviana signing off.